In sales, it's so easy to sell your features and benefits. Kevin O'Keefe, business coach, shares with us the key to success and how that is not the right strategy. And he also shares with us the 5 ways to measure the right numbers in your business for exponential growth. So, Kevin, why business coaching for you?
Well, for me, just rolling it back a bit, I qualified as a chartered accountant back in the day. But it was an idea my father had, and I didn't have any idea, so he did it. And once I qualified, I went straight into sales, into so selling. I was working with various banks in Ireland and abroad, but basically selling bank products, so advice, anything we could sell really for a fee, and was doing that around the world. I was a single father of 3 kids when they were sort of 3, 5, and 7. Nothing dramatic. She just had better things to do. And so I was working with my parents, but I was, I would say working in the Middle East, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and set up their corporate advisory project finance unit with another Scottish chartered accountant. Blank sheet of paper. They had no laws, no anything. So working with the locals, but also working with American, Far Eastern European. How do we set up? What do we do? All the time selling, doing that. Then the parents need to be closer to home because they were minding the kids. I had them in Saudi Arabia, but then the first Gulf War came along, so I had to send them back, and there was no way they were coming back to me. So I stayed and sent them back. But anyway, so got as far as London, working with people like Barclays Capital, Schroders. My patch was North Africa, the Gulf, up as far as Iran, which are interesting countries in their own right. But again, doing the same thing, working with a lot of British, obviously, but then American, Far Eastern. How do we set up? What do we do? Working with the locals, selling advice primarily, but also putting together teams and selling whatever it was, swaps, loans. And then the kids got to that interesting teenage stage, and parents said, "That's it, we're done. Get back here." And so, fair
That's
enough.
when the real fun begins, though, right?
Oh yeah, treasured moments, so I came back to Ireland. I had bought a house, had a good enough size house. I set up an office in it, and sort of looked around, and I found ActionCOACH basically. So what I liked about it was I could work from home, finish raising these kids, and also I had a global reach, which I was kind of liked from my background. So that was 20 years ago. So now I'm in Action just over 20 years in June. And was working across the board with wholesale, retail, manufacturing, trades and professions. But I've as we were talking about earlier, kind of more focused into my sweet spot is larger SMEs with a sales force. So, 10, 20 employees up to maybe 150. That I can work with and get the results getting quite good results with those, and I enjoy that.
Great. And so accounting to sales, what an interesting switch of career.
Well,
but it's all money, right? Like, sales brings in money and accounting takes care of the profit.
Figures are the language of business, and you need to speak the language. Okay, so it's been a great base for me. There's nothing in the figure side of it that I can't do. And in fact, when we get a bit further on, I developed a model when I was in Excel model, which was a monthly projected integrated profit and loss, funds flow, and balance sheet, which I now use once I get the clients up, and they use it as a Bible, because you can do projected profit and loss, but you miss out on stuff if you don't project the balance sheet. And then business owners, they're not accountants by and large. They want to know where the money went. I made all this profit. Where'd the money go? Well, I can show them in this model. And I call it a what-if model. So what if I take on 3 salespeople? What if I buy 4 vans? What if I? And they can see the impact of on the cash flow with this model. So it's they use it for planning and most these clients that I work with tend to expand, and they need to know their numbers and need to know where they're going with that from a cash flow. And this model will highlight pinch points as they grow, because again, their working capital will grow. If they have that working capital cycle, they need to be familiar with it and how it soaks up cash, and particularly if they're investing in more fixed assets, etc. So I found it very useful all through my life to have that base, I suppose.
So talk to me about sales. So what do you help businesses do you have a sales force? What area, what are you doing with them? How are you helping them?
Okay, sales forces, typically salespeople, they like to sell to people they know and like, and with the products they're comfortable with. So, the old question is, do all of your clients know all of the products and services you could supply? Virtually to a man, the answer is no. Okay. So typically I'll start with a sales force, understand, what the results are getting. Each salesperson is getting different results, but we sell to the gaps. Gap analysis is the basic one that we start with. So very simple, put the clients down one side and the products, groups of them if needs be, because usually they have thousands of products. And we put in the intersection between the name and the products, the amount they've sold in the last, 6 months, 12 months, and gaps appear. So then we can work with the sales force and say, well, tell me about this product service. Why are we not selling that to ABC company? Because they should be buying that. And then we can go through the training and be specific. You're going to sell X, Y, and Z product, but we need you to focus on these 2 or 3. So that alone will start expanding the number of sales, and also it identifies training requirements, anything like that. So on this, getting the salespeople to understand that, but also I think just rolling back to get them to understand what they're selling. And again, the hint, as we know in ActionCOACH, is it's not the product or service. Once they understand that, once they understand what it is, why they're, because again, salespeople tend to focus on the price a bit, which is a bit single dimensional. So once they understand what they're selling and what people are looking for, and I can expand on that with a story a bit later on, then it becomes a lot easier to get the kind of margins that we need for the expansion and the growth going forward. So that would be a lot of the focus when I'm working with salespeople.
So what are they selling if they're not selling the product and service?
Well, we find out from their customers. We ask them what they're buying, okay? And usually it's, they talk about it's more than just as I say, the product or service. Like one example, which we talk about later, is they're selling pipes. They think they're selling pipes, flanges, pumps, etc., to say pharmaceutical industry for, big expansions. But actually what they were buying was full orders and quick turnaround. So what I mean by that, if I order, if I've got a gang of 8, 10 guys working on a plant, building it, and I need 10 widgets now, it's no good giving me 8 because they all fit together, and otherwise I'll have this crew looking at me. So we make to meet that, we would stock up as high as we could to make sure we can give full orders, and also set a program whereby we, if you order before 12 o'clock, you get the same day. Order after that, you get the first thing in the morning. And that is, that's what people were buying. That's what the contractors and the end users were buying, say, in that particular case. But it varies enormously. What is it? If you're selling cars, you're not really selling cars, you're selling mobility. And to know what the different groups are buying. So if I'm a mechanic, I can buy a clapped out, 8-year-old, 10-year-old car because I can keep it going, and I can pay my mortgage and keep the 3 kids fed, and I can get them in now. But if I'm a business coach and I'm selling money, basically, I can't really turn up in a clapped out Toyota. I need a Mercedes or something like it, and relatively new to come and have the, if you like, the credibility to go in and talk to a business owner about selling, about increasing their cash flow or whatever it is for that.
What do you drive, Kevin?
I have a Mercedes.
I thought so.
Yeah, I would have bought a new Mercedes. Yeah, so I run that. It's, so when I turn up straight away, there's a comment from a new client. Just one I took on recently. He said, I always wanted to get one of those. And, the way it is. And it's a chat back and forth. So immediately you got immediate credibility. But as I say, if I turned up when I was working out in the Middle East and around, when I came back here, I would have had a clapped out old car, which I just needed to get from A to B. It didn't matter if it broke down because it was just going around locally. So they're both cars, but they're buying different things.
Yeah.
Now, the more you understand about what your clients are buying, the better you can solve that. And the other interesting bit is what they're buying changes. So what we were buying pre-COVID, just take a topic, and what we're buying now is quite different usually. Pick an industry,
Interesting. Okay. In what way?
Well, for instance, like say, if I was, during COVID, we all spent a lot of time when we were locked down contemplating our navels, and our whole work-life balance and our well-being. I mean, before COVID, you would hear about well-being now and again. Now it's like every conversation. So, and then sustainability has become a huge issue over that period of time. So if I'm in a business and I'm, prior to, go back 5-6 years, sustainability wouldn't be a big thing. Now, if I'm booking if I've got a hotel, people are asking me, tell me about your sustainability situation. What are you doing about that? So again, I talk with, simple things you can do as a business. You can put solar panels up. You can, watch the waste, look at what you're doing with that. These things are now important. Whereas 5 years ago, not really, it was kind of there, but but now it's become front and center, and it changes. What I want from my working life is quite different now to what I would have wanted before COVID. So this whole work-life balance, working from home, how do I make that work? As an owner, as a business owner, attracting and retaining great talent is a huge challenge now. But the opportunity is, like they did a study here recently, 1 in 2 people who at work are unhappy with where they work. So that means there's a load of 1 out of 2, 50%. In the survey they did on people in their workplace, are you happy in the workplace? And the answer was no. So that was in Ireland here. So it presents a great opportunity. You've got great people who are not happy in the business they're in. So looking at the culture of a business, I do a lot more work now with businesses on getting their culture right and getting people to be happy in work, because that's hugely important. And once people once we get it right, again, working with a business owner, they often think that's a bit fluffy, and let's get to the strategies. But I like Peter Drucker for that one. Is that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and so once they get that and they get the culture right, well, then we can attract and retain great people. And that, of course, you need a great team to look after your customers, run your systems, to look after the business that looks after your business owner, that whole virtuous circle we have, So there's a lot more work being done on that. So things change. And we had COVID. That made a huge change on how we did business. We had good old Mr. Putin and his warring. That changed, brought in inflation, brought in all sorts of things. So how we operated, say I had a car distributor at the time, they couldn't get cars. But we could get a lot more money for those cars that we did have. So they had 2 of their best years ever, and they had just celebrated 60 years in business. And the 2 years that I was working with them, they had their best years ever in terms of profitability. And they were actually, the shareholders were able to take out substantial dividend out of the business and without doing it any damage. So it's understanding what the market is, understanding what people are buying at the time, and then adjusting your strategies to meet that. But all cloaked in an overall culture that you have a positive culture. Everybody, Brad talks about it, nothing new in it. Having the vision, having the team, but just applying that within the business. And it varies from business to business how they do that.
So tell me about a client that you've worked with where you've helped through the sales force, the business be more successful.
Do you want me to? Well, there's one, there's Petrochem Group. They're local business here in Cork. They're wholesalers, as I said. They provide, they sell pumps, flanges, and things to the pharmaceutical industry. So the first question, once they, as I said to you, they had been thinking about battening down the hatches and moving from 20 employees down to 15 and waiting for the storm to blow over. This is back in 2008 when we had all this global recession, I call it global opportunity. So this guy, Mick O'Shea, he attended one of my seminars that I was holding in a local hotel and listened patiently and politely, and then said, well, this has nothing to do with me. This is all to do with shops. But he did agree to a meeting. So I said, okay, we sit down. So he told me this. He said, look, we're selling to the pumps and flanges to the pharmaceutical industry. They're pulled in their horns. They're not buying. There's no projects going on. I have 20 employed. I'll have to cut them down to 15 and hope for the storm to blow over. And my response to him at the time, at the Diag, was, well, you could do that, or you could expand. Now, this was a big, rangy guy, very fit, and he was definitely, thinking about giving me a slap. But luckily, we had a big desk between us, and he, in fairness to him, did say, "Well, how do we do that?" So the first thing we did was we found out what he was selling, and as we said, as we were talking about earlier, what he was selling was quick turnaround and full orders. So he was in a position where he had been fairly conservative, had fairly good stock. So the indigenous competition dropped their prices, and we had customers who left us for the pricing, but came back for what we were selling. Because as a wholesaler, you need to have a minimum gross margin really of about 30% to be able to reinvest in stock, to be able to fund the growth. But their competitors did is drop their prices to maybe a 10% or less gross margin. They went out of business. We were able to take their best team out of the various companies, and we were able to buy their stock at a knockdown price. So which allowed us then to expand even further. But for all that time, we kept our margins very tight at the 30, 31. So as a wholesaler, if prices dropped to 25%, we were in trouble. If you get to 32, you do fantastically well. So it's a very fine thing that you need to stay on top of. And again, as we were talking earlier, knowing these numbers and being able to interpret them for the business owner who's not an accountant, but to be able to tell them what the key points are. So that business, and we talk to their salespeople, get them to understand that. Now, salespeople tend to be focused on price. So one of the things we did was to increase the landed cost. Excuse me. Salespeople feel there's an amount that I can charge for this with my client. So we just increased pricing. So the landed cost, we put on 4 or 5% on that. They sold it at 25%, thought they were doing a great deal, but we were actually selling at 30%. The kind of little tricks of the trade just to keep them going. So both sides were happy. And indeed, as they got to understand more and more about what we were selling and why we were better, more unique and better than the competition, we were able to expand and keep expanding. It's brought its own challenges, of course. But as I say, this business, and I have a video testimonial that I was working with the father. He unfortunately passed away in 2017. The son was working in the business. He was a salesperson, never involved in the management because the father said I couldn't replace him. He's my best salesperson. But got him, he took control. I continued. I'm still coaching him today. So today, their sales are around 60 million. They would have been about 8 million when I met them. Their profits are now around 8 million. But they've generated a huge amount of cash. And he's now been able to buy a lot of premises. So my coaching is about when you generate cash, what do you do with it? That's only the start. It's about generating wealth. So that's two things you can invest in is property and shares. As a business owner, you're not really in place to study shares up and down. You don't have the time. So getting your pension topped up to the max, whatever it is, and it's tax efficient as well, is one. And own the premises you're in. The tenant, so you're going to be a fairly good investment as a basic start. But this guy, we brought an awful lot of property. He's now doing a massive development from the ground up from cash. Because as he said himself, I've got all this cash rotting in the bank. What do we do? So,
what a dilemma.
So I got the son to do a video testimonial for me. He's on my site where he talks about this story. But that's one. But there's lots more in that kind of vein because people buy me for more money and they thank me for the systems and people to run those systems and getting more time back. So you definitely have to be able to talk about the money first. And that's what our 5 ways is about. We're showing people how we get, how we can make you more money. And that gets their attention. They can see that it definitely, they get very comfortable with the fees because they're making a lot more, a multiple of the fees. And so we can focus on so my coaching starts for 6 months is about generating more cash than they would have if I wasn't there. Everybody's comfortable, then we can start coaching.
Great. So, Kevin, I want to come back to what you shared about, we don't sell our product or service. We're selling the solution that we provide, really, for the customer.
Selling. It's a deceptively difficult question when I ask a business owner, particularly third-generation business owner. I say, what are you selling? And they say, they'll all say their product and service. And my answer to that is, and I got that wrong as well when I was asked first, and so that kind of puts them off balance, because who's this coach coming in to tell me how to run my business? I'm third generation. We've been going for 60 years. What can he possibly tell me about my business? So if the first question is he doesn't know what he's selling, straight away you're kind of going, he's off balance. I used to, as a kid, I used to do judo and jiu-jitsu and stuff, and the concept of that is, if you can get them off balance, you can throw them anywhere you want. So the minute they're off balance, then you can lead them and direct them in any particular way. And so it's a deceptively difficult question to answer. And the thing is, we're selling different things to different people, depending on what it is they want. Okay, so I will go to the business, and I'll tell them, I don't know what you're selling until I do the research. And then I would talk to his best clients. What are they buying? What do they say about him? What's important to him about that? I look at the testimonials. The testimonials rarely say your products are fantastic. It's about the emotional stuff. It's about, well, I can rely on you. I can phone and forget. I can whatever. I had one client who was a logistics truck company, and his nickname was Mr. Grumpy, because he was that. People never liked him, but they bought from him because his job. What he said is, I'm a phone and forget. So if we want to move a product from A to B, I will pick it up on time. I will deliver it on time, intact. And in his office, I was in his office talking about this, and he had 2 trucks, articulated trucks, outside the door, just sitting there parked all day. And I was saying, what's that about? He says, well, trucks break down, they get stuck in traffic. If that happens, I jump in the truck and I keep organizing things from the hands-free in the truck, and I deliver. So people would phone him and do it. So he was selling phone and forget. So if I'm working and I need to move stuff, and during all the recession, when all the logistics companies and truckers were complaining about prices and diesel and he was charging what he wanted, because he knew what he was selling.
Yeah.
Okay, they all had trucks, they all had the same customers, but the customers were with him, and he felt he didn't have to be nice about it. So he was an entertaining client for a while. Yeah. So, so the point is, any business, like, we're not selling coaching. Nobody buys coaching. They don't wake up in the morning and say, I want a couple of pounds of coaching. And we need to find out when we're talking to them. And typically, as I said to you, they buy money. They thank me for the systems and the people to run those systems. But at the start, they buy money. That's our 5 ways. So we're selling money. When my BNI group, they ask me, what do you do? I said, I sell money. I help business owners make more money. Now, they may or may not believe that, but at least they'll ask me, well, how do you do that? Oh, great. Glad you asked. So away we go.
So for business owners who don't know the 5 ways and are listening to this podcast episode, see how you go explaining the 5 ways without a flip chart.
Yeah. Well, it's to start. Business owners want more leads, and that's not the place to start. It's kind of the last place you go to. Because if I give you more leads and you're not dealing with them right, you're going to butcher those, and you're just going to create chaos for you and for the people who are coming into you. So I look at, first of all, we get established what they're selling, understand, go through that, and that's a whole coaching session. It might be over 2 or 3 sessions. So once they're clear on that, we then start to look at their existing customers and, look at things like average sale, because it's always, 6 times more expensive to sell to a new person than it is to an existing client. So give or take, pick a number, but it's something like that. So we look at your existing customers. What are they doing? What are they buying? What are they actually, could they buy more from us? So the average sale is kind of the first place I'd be looking at. What are the gaps in your business? So very simple gap analysis. Give me your top 20 customers, put them down one side of the Excel sheet. Then across the top, your main products or product groups, and tell me what you've sold to them in the last 12 months at the intersection, and gaps appear. Equally, I talk to the salespeople. We have a session, and what is the potential for each one of these clients? Inevitably, the potential is multiples of what they're actually selling to them. Okay, so once we get that, they know what they're selling pretty much for each individual customer. They see the potential. They see the gaps. We're then able to work with them to build up that average sale to the existing customers. So that's one of the fastest and easiest ways to get that. And again, look at their pricing. If they know what they're selling, they're able to get their heads around what they're, around pricing. Because again, people can be single dimensional. It's all about price. Price is part of it, but there's two sides to the equation. What are they getting? What are your customers getting? So working on all that, once we get the average sale right, once we get what the salespeople know what they're selling, we can start working back up. What about your prices? What can we do with them? How can we increase those? At seminars, I ask about 20 or 30 in the room, business owners, and I say, does anyone want to know a strategy to increase your sales, increase your profits immediately? All the hands go up, and I say, yeah, what you need to do is increase your prices. All the hands go down. Maybe 2 or 3 stay up, and so they say, how do we do that? And we'd get 2 or 3 out of maybe 20 or 30. And I said, we're going having another 90-day thing in 3 months' time, funnily enough. I want you to keep a journal of all the objections you get from increasing your prices. And, we want to study all those objections, and you need to get a good thick journal for that. Okay. So the following 3 months, again, we have more or less the same group. And we say, okay, you increased your prices. Can we see your journal? And they just start laughing. There's nothing in the journal. Yeah, the most you get is one. Well, this person objected to the price. And I said, did they buy? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so 5 ways. So you've given me the first 2. So number of leads, average dollar sale.
Yeah, and then you see, we're getting the customer to come back more often. Okay, so how often are they buying from us? What if we could increase that? And the 10% is a perfectly good one. People believe that. Now, we do a lot more than that, but for credibility, we go with 10%. It's only then that we focus back on generating more leads. Okay, so once they've really worked with their existing clients, worked on the average sale, worked on getting people to come back more often, and then we start looking at their conversion rate. You're generating these leads. Where are they coming from? What is generating your leads? Don't know. Right. Well, let's have a look at that and find out what's generating the leads and what isn't. And sort of, start working on their leads. But you work back up the 5 ways, in my case, anyway. And
okay. So leads times conversion rate is the first 2.
Yeah.
Then what's next after that? Number of transactions,
and then it's average sale. But you work it in reverse order.
Okay.
Because the average sale is always the quickest one that you can get traction on very quickly. But it's also that exercise will get them to, one, understand what they're selling for each customer, be able to look after the customers, all that sort of thing. And they're in a much better place then to deal with the leads when they come in. If they understand that and they get the service right and they get the people coming back to them more often, their conversion rate will naturally increase because they have a much better understanding of what their prospects, customers are looking for.
Okay, and then what's the 5th one?
Well, obviously, it's the profitability.
Perfect.
Yeah. And to get that, so working on that, understanding what their margin is, understanding their figures. They don't need to be accountants, but they do need to understand what drives their profitability. And I can explain that to them. And it has to be in layman's terms. And typically, business owners can understand profit. They can understand pretty much cash flow. And so we build models around that on their profitability and show them. Like I had a scaffolding client recently here, and I took him on recently, and we've moved his profits from he was selling it's overall about 4 million to 5 million type turnover, and he said, I just want to stay there because I'm driven crazy for my team, and there's all infighting and backbiting. But I was able to show him with his figures, if he stayed at that number, he wouldn't make any more money. He was making hundreds of thousands, maybe. This year, he'll come in with about 2.5 million profit, plus a lot of that in cash in the balance sheet. Plus, he bought a whole bunch of stock for scaffolding. But knowing those figures, again, he's not he's 30 years in business since he was, out of school, basically, in the scaffolding business. But once he understood so I was able to show him, I said, look, at 5 million turnover, you're barely going to make a profit. But of course, with the, going past the break-even point, you start make your gross profit is your net profit after that. We were able to push him on target. We aim for 10 million. He'll come in about 9 million, and he'll have about 2.5 million profit versus maybe 200,000 or 300,000 profit in a 5 million turnover. So that's kind of current example. And and plus we had, again, we're getting the team right. It's about hiring people and firing people, and we did that as well. There was one guy who was a particular interesting chap. He had to go, and so we got rid of him. And and again, very socialistic type laws here, but you can train them out basically. And Brad often talks about that as well. But there's a way to get through it. You can get people to move on. But once he got his team right, his comment to me a couple of months ago there is, he says, "I don't know why I come into the office. I seem to be in the way." Everybody's running this. They got the systems. They're running it. They know what they're doing. They're all working together.
Perfect.
And so we're working a lot on his well-being and the whole lot. And he's got a special needs child who's challenging, and he's able to spend more time with him and get that organized. His holiday home he bought. He likes walking, dog fishing, that kind of stuff. He's able to actually do that during the week. So he's delighted with all that, and the cash is rolling in.
Business has been able to create for him.
Yeah.
I want to just come back to, sales for a minute. What's the crossover? I mean, what you were sharing before around, how to identify what that key value proposition is for a business. There's that crossover between sales and marketing, because is it marketing's job? Like what's the, why did you mention sales and not marketing?
Yeah. Okay. I tend to have a simplistic view a little bit of the two. For me, marketing is about generating the leads. Sales is about closing them. Okay. So yes, marketing is important. Absolutely. But to knowing what's working and what isn't, there's various strategies you can take on the marketing side. What is generating the leads? So the very first thing for a business is to make sure, no matter who you're contacted or how you're contacted, be it the website, be it the phone, be it wherever, where'd you hear of us? And if they're existing clients and multiple, over years and years, have you seen anything we've done recently? And it's simple again. It's simply look at what is working and what isn't. I had a hotel I was working with, and he says, "Well, I get nothing off this website anyway." So when we actually analyzed it and found that out, he was generating a huge amount of leads from that. He just hadn't noticed it, or he was kind of biased against this particular thing. I said, "You need to put more money into that because that's what's working, and you need to take money out of this stuff that's not working." So from a point of view, for me, it's, are they generating the leads? And then the salespeople need to take those leads and convert them into sales. And at what percentage are they doing that? And study carefully the money that's being put behind the various marketing. And nowadays, I'm doing the the digital marketing course with Brad now at this stage, and again, it's very easy to find out what's working and what isn't, and put the money, and it's a small amount of money behind as he calls it, the dollars behind it, to boost your leads, boost stuff coming into the business. So marketing, absolutely very important.
And it's never been easier to test and measure, or certainly to track results. With your marketing now. Back in the day, it was. You'd mail something out, and then you could measure it based on how many people came in or bought or purchased, or you put an ad in the newspaper and would gauge results based on how many phone calls you got. But now with analytics behind everything, it's a lot easier to test and measure and track.
Absolutely. You can do stuff virtually instantaneously versus maybe months of tracking stuff. And Google Analytics are great, and all the various other analytics that are there.
How often do you recommend to businesses that they track their 5-way numbers that you just shared?
Oh, that would all be right at the start. I said, these are the numbers we're going to be working with. I mean, at the DIAG, we go through those numbers.
What's a DIAG? Business owners won't know what a DIAG is.
Okay, diagnostic. So it's where the first meeting where if it makes sense at the first meeting, to go through and say we ask them about the numbers. What how many leads are you generating? Typically, they can't tell me. What's your conversion rate? Definitely can't tell me. We go down through the 5 ways, and straight away they're saying, I don't know these numbers. I need to know these numbers.
Okay.
So
Like a discovery session where you're really getting them to think about their numbers in their business.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And then, so how often for clients that you work with are you tracking those numbers with them?
Oh, all the time. It's
Monthly?
yeah, on their sheets it would be at least monthly.
Not weekly?
Weekly, yeah, because we're looking at whatever we're focused on. So be it, like, as I talked about earlier, average sale, that could be go on for months, and that's
Yeah.
the figure that we're looking at, and developing that up.
This is the real value of business coaching. Whereas, versus an accountant, which is obviously lots of value with your accountant, but it's more reactive because it's usually once a year. And often it's too late. You can't change those numbers and results. Whereas tracking these numbers monthly that you've mentioned, or weekly, even better, daily, even better, you can adjust and see where you're having success or where you need to pivot.
Yeah, well, not only tracking them but also projecting them.
Oh,
So
yes.
okay, so that you project this. What I like to do is get monthly projections going very quickly in the first 6 months. So then we can measure the from the actual management accounts how we can keep adjusting our assumptions until after 6 months we're fairly accurate on our projections. So accountants, I mean, I used to be one, I love them to bits, but they tend to be a little bit single dimensional. Okay, and they have a different job to do. Again, it's but they're very important for tracking our actual results versus what we're projecting. So we're assuming if we do X, Y, and Z, this will be the results. Okay, well then let's project that out. What does that look like in a profit and loss, funds flow, and a balance sheet? Okay, and once then we get the actual. I encourage every client that I have to do monthly accounts. Quarterly at worst if they're resisting, but really it should be monthly. And for exactly what you're talking about, if there's something that's not working the way it should, it's no good being told that 18 months later. You can't do anything about it. If we know about it as it's happening, we can adjust, we can pivot, and use that phrase from COVID, pivot. We can change our strategies and correct that. And this is, again, part of the ongoing process of working on your figures and making sure that you come back, keep increasing that profitability and cash flow for your business.
Love it. Thank you for the insights that you've shared. That's been amazing. I want 3 quick questions, if we can, to finish up, Kevin. So question number 1 is the best book that you've read, best business book you've read that you could recommend?
Apart from Brad's, yeah.
You can recommend Brad? Any one of them? There's lots.
Yeah, well, the Pulling Profits from a Hat has been quite good. But I like Tony Robbins, certainly his series of books. The last one was The Money. The last one he did. I think his stuff is very practical. I know I've changed a lot of things, both personally and in business, based on what he's been talking about, and that's worked very well. So I like that. But there's so many out there. I mean, if you want to improve your business, you need to be reading and learning about business, because it's changed. As we said earlier, it keeps changing. The one consistent thing about the market is that it'll change. So you need to be understanding what's happening out there, and understand, get your processes, techniques right to meet the challenges in the market. So there's hundreds and thousands of them out there that you can get, but certainly that's kind of the ones that I like. But I try.
Start with Brad's books. That's great advice. Okay, number 2 is, who's been the best mentor or coach for you throughout your career?
Well, currently, as again we talk about COVID, Brad is playing out of his skin since COVID on the whole webinar side of stuff, and the fact that we're now all talking on webinars as opposed to on the phone or whatever. So I find him excellent. He's really. I was kind of wondering about it, so going back about 4 or 5 years ago, but now I think he's absolute gold. So from that point of view, he's doing. Oh yeah, I look at a mentor as what can I turn into cash, and his stuff I'm able to turn into cash. So yeah, he's a great mentor.
So for those people listening, Brad Sugars is the founder of ActionCOACH, so you can search him on the internet.
Yeah, he's no, his stuff is practical. As he says himself, he's a high D. He's to the point,
Mm.
quite blunt,
Lots
which
of
is
great education on YouTube that they can find. So, Kevin, the third question is, what's the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
I think it came again is keep asking questions. I certainly didn't in my earlier days on everything. What can we do to make this better? How could it be better? Talk to people, get feedback. And even now, like I'm a bit like plastic. I'm being recycled. I've got a live-in grandson who's 15, and talking to him now and how I deal with him, I spend a lot more time with questions than I do with telling you need to do this, that, and the other. So
Yeah, that doesn't work with a 15-year-old, does it?
no, it doesn't. But I find if I can get my questions right and get him to kind of discuss stuff. And he's mad into his rugby, so I've got something in common we can talk about there that he actually thinks I know a little bit about.
That's great. So ask questions is the best piece of business.
Keep asking questions. Don't never think you know everything. Keep
Love
asking
it.
questions. Yeah.
Kevin O'Keefe, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Michelle Adams, your host here. Hats off to you for committing to your learning by listening to this podcast. And if you'd like some help implementing some of these strategies, then click the link in the description to find your local action coach. They can help you put these strategies into action and take your business and your life to the next level. In the meantime, like and subscribe so that you're the first to get our next episode. We'll see you soon.